Welcome back to the FanSpeak Network and another episode of Sibling Showdown. And we are back to the best ball edition of Sibling Showdown. So that's right. As sad as I am for the NFL season to be over, that just means the best ball season and off season has begun. So I am, of course, joined by my sibling, my brother, Steve, and we will now be coming to you each and every week, talking all sorts of best ball strategies, soon to be, of course, live drafts, and roll right into a very, very busy best ball season where we will be bringing you tons of strategy shows, live drafts, and more. Of course, check out fanspeak.com for free articles about best ball starting very, very soon. So, Steve, how are you doing? Are you as depressed as me that the NFL season is over, but also as excited that the best ball season has not begun?
Yeah, just moving on to the next year. It was obviously a great, entertaining Super Bowl, a lot of fun playoff games as well. So from an entertainment standpoint, it was good. But yeah, let's get back into the best ball streets.
Okay. And of course, if you are new to Underdog, be sure to use code FANSPEAK. You'll get a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. I think Underdog, of course, we use Underdog Drafters, DraftKings to do all these different best ball drafts, but I think Underdog is absolutely the GOAT. So if you are new, be sure to use code FANSPEAK. Okay. So Steve, today, and we are starting, excuse my dog. We are starting a series of a rookies series to talk about the rookies that are best ball draftable. Of course, we're not going to talk about all the rookie skill position players. We're going to talk about the rookies that are best ball draftable and where we should consider them and use that for our strategies as we're drafting starting now. Of course, the big board is up on Underdog Fantasy. And then, of course, right after the NFL draft, like literally when the draft ends, the Best Ball Mania will launch. And then, of course, all sorts of tournaments will roll out on the various sites from there. So we need to be prepared now, and we need to be prepared on the rookies. I know this time of year is when I learned about rookies like Sam Laporta from you. I would have not known to go early on guys like Sam Laporta had I not talked to you. You picked your brain about these prospects. So it is very important to get in the rookie streets, and there's no better person to do it than my brother, Steve. He obviously runs the NFL draft content side for FanSpeak, has for years, which is the brains behind the On the Clock mock draft simulator. So obviously, if you want to just get in the draft streets and get kind of draft focused, check out the NFL mock draft simulator. Allows you to simulate the 2024 draft to see different scenarios that could play out for your team or any team, and various big boards to choose from. We've added Joe Goodberry, a massive big board, and we'll be adding more big boards soon. So that's something to consider. Steve's the brains behind our draft prospect or product. He's in there in the draft prospect streets, watching college football, looking at the games now, looking back. So Steve, are you ready to talk quarterbacks?
Absolutely.
So tell me what you think about, let's do broad and then narrow into best ball, this quarterback landscape for the 2024 NFL draft.
So, yeah, I mean, I think this is the best quarterback class we've seen since the 2020 draft. There's the Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, and, Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love were also taken. Love in the first round, Hurts in the second round. So that ended up being an absolutely fantastic class. But just at the top, having three guys in the top 10, and Burrow, the surefire number one. Since then we've had, the Lawrence here. Lawrence was a surefire number one, but then the rest of those guys have not looked pretty good. Justin Fields is the number two quarterback in that class, and that tells you something because his team's finished with the number one overall pick the last 2 years, and they're going to be trading him away. So that just tells you how bad that class is, even past Lawrence. So so this class I think is it's good, elite at the top, and also there is some depth to it. So it is exciting on that regard. Last year we did see 3 top 5 quarterbacks, but there's some question marks with all of them. Mm-hmm. Stroud was the most NFL ready, and I think he definitely proved that in spades. I think this class has that potential, and I think arguably at least the top 2, if not top 3, could be better than any of the guys taken last year. I really think the top 2, and we'll get into it more, but I'm namely saying Caleb Williams and Drake May would go ahead of CJ Stroud if they're in the same class. But I think Stroud's pretty close to to them. But I do think that's how it would order in most people's minds.
Really? Okay. I did not realize that both Williams and May would have gone ahead of Stroud.
Yeah.
So, okay. So do you feel like, so obviously that means that you feel like both Caleb Williams and May have the potential or more than Stroud, which was obviously just an elite rookie year.
Yeah, I think the thing that people liked and didn't like about Stroud is he was obviously very good at Ohio State. Ohio State doesn't actually have the greatest track record at quarterback, and honestly, in recent years, neither does USC nor North Carolina. But Stroud has obviously been playing with elite receivers, including as we see. They have Marvin Harrison. They just keep producing receivers. They're becoming wide receiver U.
Yeah.
But guys like Garrett Wilson, guys like JSN, these first round Olave, these first rounders, that have been these last couple of years.
Further, our good old McLaurin, and then
So they are just producing top tier talent, and now Caleb Williams has had that, been surrounded with a lot of top tier guys. Drake May, not so much. So that is a little bit of a maybe plus for him when he's put up some of these big numbers with a slight step below in terms of talent around him. But I think people just wondered if Stroud could do it without arguably the best receivers in college football. And just the fact that he didn't show a lot of mobility in college. He didn't. Ohio State's quarterbacks, like Fields, like Haskins, just hadn't really shown the ability to process, because the offenses just get guys open really quickly and really easy, just because they're very dynamic. They have these dynamic playmakers. There was just, I think some unfair knocks on Stroud, because in some games like the game against Georgia in the playoffs, where they almost won, they probably should have won, before Georgia won the national championship last year. Stroud looked great, and that's against Georgia's defense. So I think that was a great game that really showed that he could play at the NFL level.
Okay, well, so you're basically saying that this year's class you think is better even than last year's class and comparable to 2020, not saying it's going to produce the exact same as 2020, which was elite. Because, if you look at like the last 20 years of quarterback classes, there are only like 2 or 3 other years like the 2020 class where you're getting, 5 starters, basically. Most classes, especially out of the first round, you're getting 1, maybe 2, and honestly, that's the God honest truth, that getting more than 1 or 2 is kind of an outlier, especially out of the first round. So you'd agree with that. And you're saying you do see that potential in this year's class as like an overarching kind of long eye view at it. Okay. Now let's narrow in and talk best ball view of it, because honestly, in the best ball streets, all we care about are the guys that are going to be draftable in best ball, meaning they are going to start this year on their NFL team, which we don't know yet at this point. And in the big board draft, you're drafting now till the NFL draft. Then once the NFL draft, that'll close. By the NFL draft, the NFL draft will occur, and then it'll be the Best Ball Mania and all the other tournaments. So then you'll be armed with the information of the landing spots, of course. But now, if the people you're drafting against people that in that contest, you all don't have the information, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Yes, we don't have the information of we know where Caleb Williams is likely going to the Bears, but we don't know where all these other quarterbacks may land. But neither do the people you're drafting with currently. Now, again, once you keep this information in mind, that then we'll obviously do shows again on their landing spots after the draft. And then we can talk through at post landing spot, how we like it. And Steve can go through the rankings kind of then too, in regards to kind of the summer long drafting. But for the big board specifically now, or just kind of like a kind of primer, let's say, for what we'll talk about later after these quarterbacks land. To me, what we talked about, recently is there's 5, kind of 6, if you want to roughly really push it, best ball draftable quarterbacks. And that, of course, is Caleb Williams, likely going to the Bears. Drake May and Jaden Daniels are kind of the 2 quarterbacks that likely will be drafted second and third in whatever order. And then, of course, you have Michael Penix Jr., out of Washington, J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. And if you really want to push it, Bo Nix, if he landed on maybe the perfect spot that, did think he was ready out of Oregon. So that's kind of the best ball draftable quarterbacks. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go through each one. I'm going to say where their ADP is on Underdog. And you're going to tell me, do you think that's too high? Do you think that's too low? And a quick reason why, and then kind of where you're having them in your big board portfolio as of now, before again you gain the information of where they are going. Something else to keep in mind: Steve did an excellent series last summer on rookie quarterbacks and kind of expectations, realistic expectations, which CJ Stroud just took that article, smashed it up because he absolutely exceeded those expectations. But he is an outlier. CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert, Robert Griffin, his rookie year, this Cam Newton, these are outlier, really. If you go back and read that article, it's not that likely. So I kind of stayed off the rookie quarterbacks last year. In the case of Anthony Richardson, he did show that he can put up spike weeks, but he only, touched the field in 4 games and got injured in like 3 of them. So, you always have to consider that, especially for guys like Jaden Daniels, and we'll get into that in a minute. So go back and read that article. Again, just putting context to everything. And Steve, now let's break these quarterbacks down one by one, starting with Caleb Williams, who has an ADP over on Underdog of 111. So do you think that's too high, too low, or just about right?
So I'd actually say this is just about right. And I think I look at it compared to Anthony Richardson last year. Richardson was going right now. Williams at 111 is going as QB 16. And QBs are going a little higher right now in this format just because so much is unknown and we know more about QBs than anything.
Do you mean rookie quarterbacks? Because quarterbacks,
no, just any quarterbacks in general are going.
Oh, well, they're not going. Last year they were going in like the first round, though. They're not going that high.
Yeah, but in general, you have like 8 guys in the top 75.
Okay. In total.
Like,
okay, I get what you're saying now. I got you.
Like right now, 13 in the top 100. That was you think you only had 10 or 11 last year. So
got it. Okay, I see what you're saying now. Got it.
So it's a little scrunched up in that middle second tier.
Right. Okay.
So what I would say is, Richardson's going kind of basically started as QB 13 and kind of finished as QB 11. So if you're getting Williams as QB 16, he doesn't have Richardson's total rushing upside, but he's got a decent rushing upside and much better passer, like far better passer than Richardson. And we do have a pretty good idea of where he's going. And, where he's going is to the Bears with DJ Moore, a very explosive receiver who, with a very poor passing quarterback in Justin Fields, had a tremendous year. A tight end in Cole Kmet, who had a really good year. And they have another first-round pick. They have, even though they trade one second rounder to Washington in the Montez Sweat deal, they have another second rounder. So they're going to be able to add another receiver from this class. They have a lot of money to spend in free agency, so maybe they go out and sign somebody. So, they're not going to have Caleb Williams just come in with no weapons. They're going to have Caleb Williams.
It's not going to be a Bryce Young situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Caleb Williams is going to come in with weapons. So I like this landing spot. And obviously, the rumors are out that maybe they keep Justin Fields. Of course, that'd be the terrible situation for this, but I don't think that's the case. They're probably trading Justin Fields for a couple more picks. So once that goes down, you can feel even more confident about this.
Yeah. My only question is who he goes around, and that's why I brought over the Underdog board. So he's going just 7 spots behind Tua, 4 spots behind Trevor Lawrence, and just a couple ahead of Jared Goff. Especially like the Tua Lawrence thing. Do you think that's warranted as a rookie?
Well, so I would say the thing with Tua is, as we saw, there were a couple ceiling games, and some of it is just because they blow out teams. But it's not like Tua doesn't really offer anything with his legs. He doesn't run for touchdowns. They just used Raheem Mostert for 20 touchdowns, and that was with the chain, and even Wilson getting a couple as well. So that's a downside there. And maybe he'd throw for a couple more next year, particularly if Tyreek and Waddle are even a little healthier. But so I have no problem taking Tua ahead of him. And, I'd probably most times if Tua is there, I'll probably take Tua ahead of him, especially if I have
A
a
Waddle
stack
or
of them.
Hill. Yeah.
But but if Williams is a top quarterback on the board, I would take him above a Jared Goff. As we see with the Lions, we know they want to run the ball. I
Run
mean,
heavy.
Goff just isn't going to have a ton of those. Like, he's going to get a lot of good solid point games, but he's not going to get spike weeks. Williams
He's
would
more
have
of a
some
floor than
potential.
ceiling. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. That answers that. So then the follow-up question to each of these 5 quarterbacks will be, where do you see Caleb Williams falling in your portfolio? Are you going to, at least in this big board portfolio, are you going to have a lot of them, just a sprinkle of them, just some? How much do you think you'll be willing to grab?
So far, I haven't gotten much, just because it seems like he gets taken ahead of that. Like I said, I typically want him kind of where he's at. I don't necessarily want to take him ahead of Tua or ahead of Trevor Lawrence, ahead of Kyler Murray, because these guys are more established products. So, but if he's there and he's the top quarterback on the board, I have no problem taking him.
Okay, that's a perfect way to answer it. Then right below that, if I scroll down just a little bit, Jaden Daniels, who's actually most people's eyes think would go number 3 to Patriots or whoever would just trade up with the Patriots. Some view him as 2, some view him as 3, is going ahead of Drake May at ADP of 118. I personally feel this is way too high for multiple reasons. I think people are doing the situation like last year, enamored with the athleticism. And yes, running can lead to spike weeks, but this seems like a one read and run guy from all the research I've done so far, which is not enough yet. I have way more to get into the streets and research. And I also worry about quarterbacks like this, a very slender frame. I've read that he takes some doesn't really protect himself well. I saw that on a podcast with Connor Rogers yesterday. And I don't know if you agree with all those things, but those things make me very nervous, which is what made me nervous about Anthony Richardson, which did bear out last year. What are your thoughts on Jaden Daniels as a prospect to draft in best ball? Is this too high or too low?
Yeah, I would just say this is too high. One, from the perspective of he probably is the 3rd quarterback taken, while there's a chance maybe Washington would take him 2nd.
Oh, hope not.
I think that's far less likely. And so if he's going to the Patriots, they don't have a lot to put around him. If he's going to another team, we don't know. It's very dependent. If it's the Raiders, sure, that's Devontae Adams, and that's a better situation. If it's the Broncos, that's kind of middle of the pack with like a Cortland Sutton. But we just don't know. And Falcons would be really good, but there's just a lot of unknown there. And also Daniels is probably, he had a tremendous Heisman year, and I think people, because of the LSU connection, want to associate to Joe Burrow, who transferred from another school and had a first average year and then a tremendous Heisman year at LSU, and of course with a couple of elite receivers as well. But the difference is, Daniels didn't necessarily show up in some of their biggest games as well. He definitely got out-dueled a couple times, Jordan Travis, Milroe, a few other times. And not to take anything away from him statistically, he definitely deserved the Heisman, but I just don't know if he's ready for the day one step that like a Joe Burrow had. I think he's going to take some lumps, and I think there's potential there, and he can definitely run, and he'll probably have a few spike weeks, but it is also about what he's around. I mean, Goff and Stafford, they're not going to have spike week after spike week, but they're going to have multiple plus 20-point games. Kirk Cousins, we don't know where his landing spot's going to be, but we know he's one of the most effective fantasy quarterbacks of the last 7 years. Finishes top 10, if not top 5 in fantasy in that time. Aaron Rodgers, also in that mix if he comes back with a guy like Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. I just feel like it's a little too high. I mean, I wouldn't mind him if he's being taken. And also, it's just 118. Like, you look at the other positions in that group, Stafford's going 10 spots later, Cousins 15, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, I'd rather take a running back or a receiver at 118 and then my quarterback, the next round in Stafford or Cousins.
Yeah, 100% agree. Jaden Daniels is quite honestly a fade for me in the big board. We'll see the landing spot. But I mean, just to wrap up Jaden Daniels, do you worry about the durability issue? To me, it feels like a little bit of a Robert Griffin part two. I'm not saying I'm not just labeling him, 1-year wonder or bust or anything, but just like the fragile nature of him as a running rusher. He seems like his frame is small.
Yeah, he's
And
gonna have to learn to slide. I mean, he did
okay.
not, take, uh, you know, do a great job with that in college. And in college, he definitely was faster than a lot of guys on the field. That's not
That's
always
not
going to
going
be
to
the
happen.
case.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, just look at some of these linebackers can just absolutely fly, much less safeties and corners. So,
Yeah.
or even D ends. I mean, the T.J. Watts, the Miles Garrett's they can chase down some of these running quarterbacks for sure.
Yeah. So he's a fade for me? Is he a fade for you, or are you sprinkling in your big board
Right
profile?
now at that spot, I mean, maybe if he's slipped a little bit in a particular draft, if I feel really good about the rest of the team,
Mm-hmm.
feel good about the quarterback I have ahead of him, and feel much more confident in it. So there'd be some depending factors,
Yeah.
but in like just without knowing the landing spot, and
Yeah.
again, it can change if it's Atlanta or Raiders, it's a little bit better. But
Right.
boy, the Patriots, that's really rough
That's
landing
brutal.
spot to go that
Yeah.
high.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Drake May, hopefully, if Washington is staying padded two, that would be their selection for the quarterback out of UNC. Talk to me about ADP currently of 150. Is that too high, too low, just right for Drake May?
Well, I mean, I think it's just right. I mean, part of what made CJ Stroud great was because his ADP wasn't
The
too high.
value. Mm-hmm.
Yes, he would have outplayed his ADP if it was the same as Anthony Richardson last year, but you wouldn't have gotten near the value.
Yeah.
And and so the risk that you were taking with Richardson was much higher.
Mm-hmm.
And so here with May, you look at it and Williams and Daniels, and it's just you're taking it so many rounds later and getting a similar upside. I mean, May ran more in college than Williams, not as much as Daniels, but obviously more effective overall as a passer with less weapons. I mean, Daniels literally had the two, arguably two of the most talented wide receivers in college football. And so, yeah, I mean, May, he's got the prototypical size, big arm. He had a few down moments, but he can run, especially in around the red zone. So yeah, I think he can be a very effective, give you some spike weeks, be a really good quarterback in the right system. And if it is likely Washington, he would be coming in with a innovative offense coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, ran air raid system that Drake May ran in college under Phil Longo.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, you got guys like Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, let's use them this year.
Yeah, and we'll see how they're used, but that's a good start.
So Drake May in your portfolio for big board, again, we think he'll land with Washington. We'll make decisions then, but if he does land with Washington or basically your decisions for big board, are you grabbing some shares here, a decent amount?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's a good spot. I like Baker Mayfield right behind him if Mayfield and Mike
Sure.
Evans are back in Tampa. But
Yeah.
other than
Let
that,
Mayfield alone.
I mean, I would take May over, probably Geno and the rest of these quarterbacks in that next mix. So
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. Then the other three quarterbacks, Steve, are kind of lumped together, and that's Michael
Yeah.
Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy, and Bo Nix. So I'm going to scroll down, and you'll find them all at 219 for Penix, 219 for McCarthy, 229 for Nix. You can explain this better, but basically, we think all three could be drafted in the first, maybe one or two fall to the second. I know a lot on Penix depends on his medicals, which we'll know more about when the combine happens in a couple of weeks. I'm the most impressed by Michael Penix. I was really, really impressed with him, especially the semifinals game, I believe. But the few games I did watch of him this season, I was very, very impressed and just felt like I saw him get through reads, felt like you just saw that big arm that you could see him being successful at the NFL level. Obviously, if health stays, breaks his way and he stays healthy. So I know the situation with all these guys is, are they being drafted to groom or are they being drafted to start? So with that said, where do you land on all three of these guys in best ball drafts?
Yeah. For right now, I have no problem taking Penix, especially because I do think he is probably most likely to start the most of these
Start, yeah.
games. And even if somebody like JJ McCarthy is starting, I mean, this guy wasn't throwing 200 yards in college a lot of games.
Yeah.
Is he going to really come in the NFL? And while he's mobile enough, is he really going to come in and just start ripping it?
Right.
Again, maybe if it's like the absolute nuts landing spot, but if not, I just don't think. Maybe 3-4 years down the road, absolutely, he can really develop. But he was in a pro style offense, so that helps him in some degree. But I just don't see him coming out and just being a big prolific passer as a
Right.
rookie, even if he shows enough to be a starter.
Yeah.
But from a mental standpoint, from not making mistakes, which is great, but I just don't think he's going to be a major fantasy producer. So Penix is the one I feel the most with. I think Nix, if it's the right landing spot, could he's got some rushing ability as well. Obviously, can throw the ball a little bit, not the biggest of arms, but again, the right system with the right weapons, and if he's got a clear path to starting, I would have no problem taking him. But Penix is the only one right now without knowing where these guys are landing that I feel confident with. But yeah, the injury will be the factor, and that is the one thing that could potentially knock him down. But it just goes to show that the bottom of the quarterback tier is pretty thin right now. We'll have to see, where these guys land. But Penix, I would say Penix, you're likely going to get, whether it's Raiders, whether it's Broncos, Vikings, if they're not re-signing Cousins, something like that. Probably going to one of those types of teams.
Right. So are you drafting him? He would be the only one of those three that I draft at all right now. Are you drafting him, or are you just kind of playing it safe and going to wait till the Best Ball Mania opens and when all the
Yeah, I mean, generally, I still typically, especially without knowing bye weeks and stuff like that, I like having three quarterbacks, and so I like getting my third quarterback in that tier above of like Carr, Levis, or Young, because I think we know they're kind of locked into those starting roles. And sure, they might be just average starters at best, but they're likely going to be a solid floor play where Penix, the rookies are wild cards, and some of these other guys who are free agents or could get replaced, like a Daniel Jones, could obviously get replaced with a rookie or a free agent. We just don't, I just don't feel confident enough right now. So typically I like going with that Carr, Levis, Young trio for my third quarterback, but I think I've taken Penix one or two times, but that's when I've had like really strong 1-2 quarterbacks who I know exactly where they're going to be this year.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, this has been super helpful for me. And we're going to do it for every position. We're going to talk running backs, receivers, tight ends. Obviously, running backs and receivers might need to be a two-parter because there will obviously be many more best ball drafted running backs and receivers than there are obviously quarterbacks and tight ends. So we will cover it all. Steve is going to be covering it all, written on fanspeak.com. So be sure to check that out. I'll be covering a strategy series soon on fanspeak.com. And again, they'll keep just rolling from there. Tons of best ball content. We're excited. So this has been fun, Steve. Can't wait to keep doing these. But we will, again, check out all the content on Fanspeak and check out our next episode next week when we break down the running backs. So for Steve, I'm Meg, and we will see you next time.